Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are, of course. I'm not going to be able to see everybody on one screen, so bear with me if you have questions. Greta Hartman's here to receive the questions, and we'll put them. That's Greta. Hello, Greta. If you want to show yourself and distract me, please do. No, I'm kidding. Anyone who has a question, please chime in. And I just want to say thank you for making time, because this is a big investment for who you say you want to be. And I only have two favors to ask you. And if you worked with me before, that's light. One is be present, as present as you can. If you're driving down the road and listening to it or trying to watch it on your cell phone, please be careful. And the second favor is to just bring your ownership, bring who you want to be. And let go of any victim feelings or any less feelings that you might be carrying around. Today is all around being courageous. And I love this quote. I shared a few others prior to, if you were able to join on, but Carly mentions right here that culture is not defined by statements. We can all have stuff on our wall, mission, vision. Culture is really important, but as she points out, it's how we behave. And the reason I put this whole webinar together a few months ago, and I've tweaked it a lot since, is because we don't know how to have courageous conversations. We don't know how we want to show up in a conversation, especially when it becomes difficult or tough. And my goal today is well, there's multiple. One is to leave you with some tools that will help you prepare for and engage in difficult conversations to a point where you're actually looking forward to them. And courageous conversations can be those that are not only enjoyable because you're looking forward to it and you're nervous, they are also obviously around difficult ones, regardless of relationship, whether it's a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, a partner, and certainly our leaders. But I'm going to pretend for a moment, and the majority of you signed up for the webinar because you know you have some areas to improve, and or you want to become a better leader, not only of self, but of team and certainly organization. So this is all about learning about courage. It's about an approach to be, in my opinion, one of the best things you can do as a leader is be curious and speak with intention. The other is, I don't know any organization that would hire me or any other buddy of my ilk if they weren't more interested in becoming higher engaged and being more productive. Now, my conversation today, or this webinar today, is about being productive, but without judgment, getting into a conversation without judgment. And then, as I mentioned, I want to help some of you build as leaders. What is the real challenge? What is keeping us from having these conversations? And ironically, I had a correspondence or communication earlier this morning with a colleague, and I asked her, why do you believe courageous conversations are so difficult? And in a roundabout way, we both came to the same answer. It's about fear. A lot of us are just frankly afraid. But I asked her, what if we truly loved the relationship? What if we really wanted that relationship to be better? Could we love into how we prepare and how we show up for each other? And would we then become more courageous? Well, let's find out. This is what happens around the universe today. You've all walked into a Starbucks or a restaurant and seen a family engaging, like this happy, possibly married couple in front of you. But the point isn't their faces and what they're not doing. Who knows? They could be planning for a family vacation and they're just not very interested in where he says they want to go and she said. But what we do is we procrastinate. We really don't know how our communication supports our relationships. And oftentimes we just beg out altogether and we delegate it. I don't know about you. I don't know how you can delegate a conversation that's vital to a relationship you say is important, but that's one of the questions I want you to ask. What kind of relationships do you want? And what are you willing to do? How are you willing to communicate? How are you willing to show up in order to communicate at a much higher level? I'm going to ask you to consider making 2 or 3 of these 5 shifts. And if you do, you'll have more confidence, you'll have higher productivity, you'll have much easier time with conflict resolution. That I can guarantee. You'll have more agreements. And frankly, a little hint out there, if you're taking notes, get rid of the word expectations. Start living your life into agreements, literally asking people if they would agree to what you just got done discussing. And then my favorite, improved relationships. The shifts are these: empathy, language, emotions, and listening. These are 4 shifts we're going to dive into right now. And if you can lean in for the next 10, 15 minutes, I guarantee you'll get something out of this. So here we go. Shift 1 is to create empathy and be humble with a desire to engage. Understand the unique balance, or the balance between discipline and love. And I put parenting up there because I believe, as a father of 2, soon to be 10, just turned 12, parenting and leadership are absolutely side by side. How you listen, how you show up, how you speak, the tone, the timing, all of that. But are we parenting and listening, and are we leading from a place of empathy? Which means, do you really care about where the other person's coming from? And you'll see a lot of connection with shift number 1 here in a second. Again, could be a whole different couple, could be the same couple with some time spent at a webinar about courageous conversations, and here they are. Somebody's communicating, someone's listening. Notice what he's listening with. He's listening with his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, if we listen and with our eyes too, we have already decided the person standing in front of us is important, not more important, just important. And how many times do you talk to your kids with your phone in your hand, your shoulder to one side, and you're trying to do something else and you think you're listening? Leaders, same thing. No one wants to talk to the back of your head or the side of you. If you're interested and you really care about where they're coming from, turn around and look at them. This is something I could take a whole hour on, and I share with all my clients. It's a combination and the distinction between discipline and love, made famous by John Eades, who wrote the book, 8 Proven Principles for Better Leadership. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but as you can imagine, too much discipline and not enough love, you're a ruler. I don't know about you, but last time I heard about a ruler, it was the day of Caesar, maybe a little more recent, and then everyone says, I can't wait to be in management. When did you graduate from college and say, I wish I could be in management? You're either a leader or you're not. You manage process, you lead people. Please, obviously that rhymes with appease. And if you're appeasing your children or you're appeasing your followers, good luck. They're not growing and you're doing all their work. And then there's support. Again, good. It's okay to be supportive. But what we really want you to do is be thinking about the people you're communicating with a spirit of or heart of elevation. How do we elevate everyone around us? And that's up to you to decide. But the best way to find out, ask them. Shift number 2 is about language and behavior to build trust in relationships. A lot of the times we have difficulty in conversation is because our relationships aren't built on trust. And because you're connected with someone on LinkedIn doesn't mean it's a relationship. It's just a connection. But if you have a relationship with someone, and again, back to what I said earlier, if you believe it's important to you, you will language and behave. You will speak in a way. You will choose words and meanings of how you show up that actually tell the other person they're important to you. Now, why would we spend so much time talking about somebody else when Courageous Conversations is about you? Well, it's how you prepare for a conversation with someone else. And if you want to have a courageous conversation with yourself, which I highly recommend, it's still 2 people when you look someone else in the mirror. A little hint, the person in the mirror will never lie to you unless you lie to him or her. We all know this person. You've been this person. You've worked for this person. You've worked with this person, or leaders, you've allowed this person to behave and language in your organizations. You could be married to this person, man or woman. It's just an example. But all of these questions are not only ineffective, but it immediately turns the other person off. Doesn't have to be in a suit and tie. Could be driving down the road and all of a sudden you're triggered and you're asking why, what, why? And all of a sudden you really don't want to engage in this person. So I guess I show this to say, please don't be this guy. Ask questions and are curious, but not accusational and or judgmental. And you're staring at a man who has gone through a significant amount of work to be less judgmental and more curious. And when you are, you get feedback, you get love, you get response, and you get collaboration. Language and behavior focus, again, you'll hear a lot about this throughout today, but it's really, if you're focused on yourself, you'll get a win-lose, or a best avoid, you'll get a lose-lose. If you appease, you're focused on someone else, same thing as we said earlier. If you're only focused on them and not you, which is ironically something I come across a lot in my coaching. They believe that they're behaving in a way that is so positive because they're appeasing and pleasing and taking care of everyone around them. Leadership is not about taking care of people. It's about serving them, guiding them, and elevating. Like the other one, compromise is okay. Everybody says, yeah, we had a good conversation, we compromised. But no, where you want to play is in the Northeast quadrant. You really want to play when everybody wins and you're collaborating. Not everyone has to agree, but if you come out of the conversation in alignment and you collaborate and everyone agrees as to where we're going, I believe you'll have a better chance of having successful conversations. Shift 3 is about emotions. As you can imagine, a lot of things that get involved in our difficult conversations and we don't muster enough courage is because we allow our inner voice and our outer voice to conflict. And you'll see an example of what somebody looks like when they are, first of all, they're overwhelmed. They've just gotten 4 emails and they don't know which one to do first. And whether she's preparing to have a conversation or just had a difficult conversation, if we allow our emotions into our conversations, it makes it difficult to listen. It takes a toll on our well-being. As you can imagine, it leaks into our conversation. So in my mind, this is all about the mind's toxic waste. And not to make fun of it, but think about other waste. When you dump it, it pollutes the environment, which means your relationships, your office, your team, your spouse, your kids. When you hold it in, again, visual up to you. But then what I like to remind my clients, and this comes through a lot of research, is when you process it, when you actually think about it and talk about it, whether it's out loud or with a cohort or with a man or woman in the mirror, you literally can generate new energy, because then and only then, when you release it and you discover what's going on and own it, then you'll be able to have a conversation with someone. But if you're not willing to process what's going on in your mind and your heart, then you're going to have a hard time preparing for a courageous conversation. This is probably one of, well, I should say it is the most difficult and the most important. And speaking of important, the reason why most of us are very, very poor listeners is because we wake up thinking about one person and one person only. And regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not, or you're on a team, you have a company of your own, you're working for someone, until you really decide to listen, and with your eyes too, and listen with empathy, and listen to understand somebody, but not to be understood. We're such in a hurry today. We all want to know how important we are. We all want everyone to listen to us, but are we listening to you? Are we listening to the people that we say are important? And again, I'll go back to kids, spouses, partners, and definitely followers if you're a leader. So I call it active listening. And when I say with your eyes, it's impossible to be doing 2 things at once. And I don't need to see a raise of hands because I know you're out there. If you believe you're a great multitasker, and in fact, you put on LinkedIn that you are a good multitasker, stop. Because as soon as you believe you can do something, 2 things or 3 things once, let me remind you that you might be able to do it, but you're not doing either one of them at 100%. Because as soon as you do 2 things, you're now 40% on each of them, and you're leaking 20% energy. If you want to argue with me, please give me a ring. Would love to walk you through how you can't. But the other thing that's more important to today's conversation is I know you're listening to me because you're looking in my eyes. And I don't mean staring me down and making me feel uncomfortable, but you're present. And when you're actively listening, you will be present. You will actually tell yourself and the other person, I'm being present. Just say it. Don't have to tell him or her, but be it. I've had relationships where I will literally just wait until the person is done having another conversation with someone who's not even in the room, texting, emailing, and I just ask, I'll be right here when you're ready to communicate. Does it sound like a smart aleck? No, but I don't do it enough to be a smart aleck. I just let them know I'm ready when you're ready. And if not, let me know when I can come back. Think about that. If we exude the example of listening, I guarantee you your spouses, your kids, your followers will see you as that and start to recognize he or she needs us to be present because she's showing up that way. Imagine if you did that just a little bit better. Why would we listen better? As I mentioned in the very beginning, instead of expecting something, that guy in the picture, or you even worse, I expect you to know this. I expected you to do this. We talked about this yesterday and you're pointing. But if we're really listening in these conversations, we will get to an agreement. And we can look each other in the eye and say, it was great. I know what you're going to do. I know what I'm going to do. And we leave in a collaborative way. And this guy, I'm sure some of you have heard about him. Love this quote. When you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. So my ask of you today is, do you want to learn something new? Do you really want to know how to communicate better and bring courage into your conversations? And if you do, I believe you will be more confident and prepared for any conversation. We're going to talk about how to prepare, why you should prepare, why you should actually spend time getting ready to speak to another person, speak with another person. As I mentioned just a bit ago, you'll create more agreements, you'll resolve conflicts more readily and more quickly because there isn't any you know what on the table. You both know at 12:15 tomorrow, we're going to have a conversation about how April and Doreen are getting along, and we both want to get along better. We both want to lead our team better. And then if you don't want to improve your relationships, you're probably on the wrong webinar. Because Aden Leadership is all about language, behavior, and relationships. And if we can focus on that and understand the core of those, and by the way, the core of what we say, how we behave, and how we relate come from our heart and our soul and our core beliefs. And it's my opinion that there are really only two sources of everything that we say, do, and behave as, and that's fear and love. And you get to decide immediately, as soon as you start to react, Greg, are you coming from a place of fear or love? It's a 3-second question, but I can tell you it'll save you hundreds and hundreds of hours and even solve challenges that you've never believed you could because you stopped talking and asked yourself, where am I coming from right now? And what's wrong with asking somebody, hey, I have a minute. I need to think about that before I respond. I don't care if you're the CEO, the CFO, the COO, but if you pause before you say something that's going to be hurtful, I believe the people in front of you are going to look at you and go, she's mature, he's mature, and not just trying to be right, not trying to be the boss, because that went out of style eons ago. You'll be more productive. I don't know any organization that wants to save time, money, and energy. And today you'll have tools to help you and your team save just that. You'll save time because you'll be better prepared. You'll save money because you're not going round and round about things that could have been solved in 15 minutes, but you were too afraid to have the conversation. And then my favorite, how much is peace of mind worth? How much is it worth to you to feel good about who you are and what you say and how you show up? I don't know about you, but when I'm happy, when I'm clean, I have nothing to hide, I have no one to look over my shoulder and wonder, was I truthful? Did I say that? If not, go back and clean it up. Just clean stuff up and as quickly as possible. That's what integrity is all about. I am my word. And when you can't, then go back and say these 3 precious words. I'm sorry. Now, sometimes they might not even remember. What are you sorry about? I should have done, I could have done better. I just want to let you know you mean a lot to me, and I said something that I shouldn't have said. If you have to ask for forgiveness, you're that big of a person, God bless you. I'd recommend that as well. So a good table setter, Gret, I guess I'll ask you, are there any questions that we need to address before we move on to tools?
Not yet, not at this time.
Okay, let me know if there are.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So I wouldn't ask you to just do and be and have all this stuff if I didn't suggest how we're going to do it. Are there tools that you can use to understand how you can prepare and overcome almost any obstacle? And that's a yes. We're going to talk about 3 of them right here. One of them is called the ladder of inference. Some of you may have heard of it. The other one is triggers. And I believe one of the more popular tools is because we all have them, we all know about them, but we tend to dismiss them for a variety of reasons. The one I believe will help you the most and the most immediately is just focusing on interests and not just yours. Because that's easy to do, and we walk through the world telling ourselves how wonderful we are, and that's why we don't communicate as well as we should. I call it get over yourself, but some people don't like that because they don't realize, I don't realize how long they've been educated, how many years it took them to get the C in front of their name, and how important they are to the organization. And you're right, I don't care. I just care about how you lead and how you relate, how you behave, because the people in front of you, you said they're important, not your title. Okay, let's jump in. Ladder of inference has been around for a long time. It helps us kind of with a reality check about what's fact and what's story. And for you, you could actually be telling a story because you're sticking to the facts, but you're coming across as telling a story. And in short, what happens is there's this gigantic pool or this gigantic ocean of data out there available to us. And no, I don't mean Google, but certainly Google put this amazing amount of data on the map. But what I'm talking about is the pool of available data that you tend to ignore because you've already selected the data that what? It supports your assumptions. It supports your conclusions. And so you conclude, and then you just go about your business because you believe that what you're going to say supports your beliefs. But that's only because you've got this loop. You go back to the same thing and you make the same decisions, the same assumptions, and then based on your beliefs, you take action. So what I'm asking you to do is consider thinking about things, seeing things just a little bit different. Widen your sphere of information and reading, listening, reading blogs, whatever it takes, whatever you enjoy. But imagine if we opened our mind and our heart and our soul to new information, new data, we would understand where other people are coming from a lot more than we do today. So I'll give you about 30 seconds. Take a peek at this picture and just think to yourself, what do you see? If you want to speak up, you can. If you want to just chat it in, you can. It's just something to use as a quick example.
It's a gymnast stretching their left leg.
Beautiful. Most of us see a parrot. Honestly, whoever spoke up, I'll tell you, I've seen this so much. I don't see the parrot anymore. I only see the gymnast or the incredibly toned individual sitting on a stump. And no, I cannot do that. So it just gives us a real quick, what are we seeing? And do we see the same thing over and over and over? And yes, we do, because we've programmed that way. So I want you to notice the shape of this ladder of inference. Just get that in your mind for a second. If you decide to look at things differently, if you allow yourself to select data from a different source and don't assume and don't come to conclusions so darn quickly, you may have a ladder that looks like this. And what you see is what? more actions, more opportunities, more options for you to act. Because once you speak and once you act and once you behave, that's what you are putting out into the world. So let's not get in such a hurry to just go back to that same pool of data every time to support, 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 and only then convince people. And that's what we do, right? Well, I can't see that. I don't understand how you can't see this. Well, it's called the beach ball, by the way. You're seeing yellow and red, and you're speaking yellow and red, and I'm speaking blue and green. And I have this conversation with my clients all the time until we stop and go, wait a minute. I'm not only not listening, meaning I don't believe there's a yellow and red. I can't believe he or she is so whatever. They can't see blue and green. And we go on and on and on and on. And how many times have you had a conversation where you're literally talking at the same time and it doesn't even dawn on you, it's impossible to speak and listen at the same time. But you're so enraged, you're so committed that what you have to say is more important than what he or she is saying, because you want to so much get your beliefs sold or seen. And so you repeat the same behavior, the same action over and over and over. So the lesson here, if you're interested, is think about where else you can get information. Think about where else you can learn about how your beliefs and how you act are not producing valuable relationships. And frankly, I'd ask you to take a second and write down 3 people that you know, you believe, that if you did something just a little bit different, and I keep saying a little bit because, ladies and gentlemen, it's not difficult to shift. It's not difficult to decide after this webinar, tomorrow morning, next Friday, whenever you need to put it off to, you can decide to be kinder, nicer, a better listener, more patient. Ask yourself, wait a minute, am I talking a language they're not listening to and I'm the boss and they should be? No. Ask yourself that mental question. Am I hearing blue and green, or am I speaking blue and green? Because I want to make sure we're on the same page. And how do you find out if you're on the same page with one of the 3 people I've asked you to note? Ask them. Are we on the same page here? Nope. Have no idea where you're coming from, Greg. It was parrot all the way. Didn't see the gymnast. Didn't see your interest in taking more pictures than we've already taken. Whatever the issue is. And by the way, how do big issues get big? They start as little issues. They go unresolved. They go uncommunicated. And all of a sudden, weeks go by, months go by. People, and I'll tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here, I know of a relationship that I'm in right now that a year ago, she would have sworn to you that these 3 people were 3 of her best friends. Things got tough and they hid, and now they're gone. Why? Fear? Coward? Uninterested in the relationship? Was it ever a real relationship? I don't know. All I know is if they would have wanted to, not had to, but wanted to have a courageous conversation, it would have either ended differently, which is fine, or it would have continued to be with more purpose and more intention. And I hope that means something to you all out there. So when we're in this space and we're using this tool, you want to think about and share what it is you're thinking. And here is what I believe, and here is how I got there. So you're not justifying, you're sharing. There's a big difference here. You're not selling, you're sharing. This is how I got to where I am, right? Blue and green, yellow and red. So how about if we did this? See this? This is what I've been talking about. And show them your side of the beach ball. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened, not using the beach ball analogy, but just slowing down. Someone will go, oh, you ready for this? I now see what you were saying. Now, how can you see? Wait a minute, you can see, you can listen with your eyes. That's where that phrase comes from in my mind. Inquiring is always great. Being curious is always powerful. Help me understand how you got to where you got to. Now that doesn't mean, well, I can't understand that. Tell me, prove to me. Just look at your forehead and your eyes. They get all squinty and irritated, and who wants to talk to that person? But help me understand where you're coming from. Help me understand how you got there. Share your ladder with them. They'll share their ladder with you. You're probably thinking, I don't have time to have all these courageous conversations. You're right. Keep telling yourself that, and watch your relationships just dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and your teams get less and less and less powerful. It's up to you. Stick to the facts. Please don't assume. We've covered that. And what you don't know, you don't know. How are you going to find out something? Do you ask Charlie and Cindy what they want for breakfast or dinner? Or you just tell them this is it, come and eat? Depends on how old they are, how much information you want. But if you serve them something you know they're not going to eat, I've been there, both sides actually, and it's just silly. They'll eat because I told them to. Okay, one more question might get you a better result. One of my favorite slides I ever share, and I'll just let you read it. Yeah. Everybody else needs to change. I'm good. I'm perfect. Just ask me. I'm a great leader. Just ask me. No, I'm going to ask your followers, how well does he or she listen? I'm going to ask your followers, how much do they show up for you? And I'm going to ask your followers, how do they really example leadership? And if you're not a good example of leadership, you're not a good example of communication, how in the world do you wish to develop your people around you? And one of them, or possibly two of them, have the potential to take your seat. So again, get over yourself, have some empathy, show up with humility, and quit using the same information to justify yourself. It's not sexy, it's not powerful, and it's old school. Okay, what do you think we're talking about now? Watch your step, tread lightly, because you're getting ready to be what? You're getting ready to be triggered, or you already are and you don't even know it. And I'll tell you, this is one that has been, this whole area of trigger has been so powerful for me. Literally in the moment, I can now tell myself, Greg, you're getting ready to be judgmental. You're feeling sorry for yourself. You don't understand exactly where he or she's coming from, so that this is all about being triggered. And we all have them, and we all should know or could know better the triggers of the people that are in our life. But we know when we're getting sensitized. We know when we're getting our feelings hurt. And then we either hide or we get angry and we get defensive. And then, right, are we coming from a place of love? We're coming from a place of fear. Right then, make a decision and ask yourself, where are you coming from? And especially when you know you're being triggered, you can literally say, not going to do it. I'm not going to say anything, or not, now is not the time. And I'm just going to listen, or I'm going to ask for a moment, like I said earlier. So I want you to take a minute, and I want you to write down the 3 things that trigger you. And hopefully it's not brick walls or a 58-year-old man wearing a blue and white shirt. And if it is, I'm sorry, I can't change that right now. So take a minute, write down your triggers, and we'll be back in about 45 seconds. Here's some common signs. This is what happens when you become triggered. Second one for me, I know I'm triggered and I'm thinking, am I really paying attention? Am I really being present? I don't have emotional outbursts as much anymore, and I don't know if I'm talking fast. But this 8th one, is one that I've really had to let go of. Listening and not being judgmental has been really valuable to me and my relationships, especially as a leadership coach and executive consultant, you can imagine. So we talked about these signs that you have, and then managing triggers. As I mentioned, as soon as you become aware, and if you are, you'll know your personal triggers, you'll know the physical signs you're experiencing, etc. And if you can recognize in the moment when you get triggered and why, it really helps. And again, it might seem corny, but if you need a minute, whether you're the leader or the follower, the parent or the child or the spouse or the partner, whatever, it's never uncool to say, may I have a minute? And if you know that person well enough, they may have exhibited some behavior from you before. And instead of seeing it again, of course, they're going to give you a chance to pause or go think about it, or even reschedule, depending on how bad it's getting. But what I'm trying to get you to do is, by using these first two tools, not only will you show up better prepared, but when you're in it, you'll be able to perform to a way where it's going to be good for you and the other person that you're communicating with. When you understand where your old patterns are coming from and why they're showing up, then you can be a more powerful communicator. And if you don't, they can sabotage you, and they can certainly sabotage the conversation and possibly the entire relationship. It's imperative that you understand what's going on in your body, in your mind, in your heart. And if your heart's pumping 15 miles an hour and it's only usually going 5, like you're on stage, or you're scared about, or you're afraid of what you're going to say, a deep breath, a glass of water, take a moment, whatever it is. But it's okay to let the other person see that this conversation is important to you, better than showing up braggadocious, cocky, arrogant, and not listening. Again, you decide. But we need to slow down, and we can create new ways of listening. We can create new ways of communicating if we want to. We can rewire what's going on up there. And those of you in the medical field know exactly what I'm talking about. It just takes time. And you can let go of anything that's not serving you if you wish. You can write it on a rock and throw it in a river or a lake or an ocean. You can put it on a piece of white athletic tape and put it to the bottom of your shoe. I will not be judgmental. I will not use this word, or whatever it is for you. Just write it down and get rid of it. Well, how can you say it's that easy, Greg? Try it. If you don't want to show up like a you-know-what, then stop being that you-know-what. No one's telling you you have to. You're allowing yourself to do that. If you don't know Viktor Frankl or read any of his stuff, he's an amazing individual. And he said this about what we're talking about. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. So decide what it is you want to say based on what you've heard or thought you heard, but please decide in that moment how you're going to respond, because that leads to who you are and how you're growing. And it says our happiness. And I want this for you to believe our happiness, meaning the people that you're communicating with, our relationship, our family, our team, our organization. This one decision can help you become a much more powerful leader if you're interested. And write the email. Enjoy writing what your inner voice wants to say, but don't hit send, so your outer voice is going to get you in trouble. And that comes in an email, that comes in a text, that comes in a phone call. I'm asking you to prepare and slow down for these courageous conversations. The third tool is focus on interest. And there's 3 things here. There's the issue, what's going on. There's the position or your stance of something. Then there's interest. And you can see in a minute why we're going to focus on interest. The issue is a matter in dispute, whatever it is. There's a lot of it's out there. What are we really talking about? And if it's just the it all the time, usually not much gets resolved. And especially when you're down here, where you're taking a stance about where you're coming from. Remember the beach ball? You want me to see yellow and red. I want you to see blue and green. And especially because we are both disagreeing with how much air should be in the damn ball to begin with. Well, that's okay. That happens. But what we're suggesting that you do, what I'm suggesting that you do, is you focus less on the issue. And it could be anything. It could be about money. It could be about being noticed. Could be something small, could be something large. The position is the stance that you take. But what we really are focusing on here, if we ask more questions, we remember how I mentioned we show up curious, we show up interested in where the other person is coming from. Empathy, one of the big shifts I've asked you to make. And he or she doesn't really care about the money, doesn't care about the time, extra time putting in. They just want to feel like she's being treated or he's being treated fairly. Now, how would you know that if you just showed up like you always showed up and pointed to somebody and acted like you really don't care about where he or she's coming from? If we could focus on where others are coming from more often, we will save time, we will save money, and we'll save energy. And I don't know about you, but when we exude so much energy on things that are trivial because we have to be right, we don't really care where someone else is coming from, it wears us down. And how many times have you come home, and I know some of you are probably still working from home, but even like I do, when I transform from being on and I go upstairs and if I haven't been who I want to be, who do you think's going to, they're not upstairs now, but who do you think is going to feel a person they don't deserve to feel? My 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, my new spouse, my friend who's coming to the door, somebody's coming to the door to deliver, they don't deserve that. So when you're focused on other people's interests and not your own, you come from a place of what I call a serving heart or an open place. And when you do that, you immediately show and demonstrate how much more important they are than when you started. And I'm asking you, how can you focus on other people's interests more often? That's a question. The answer is show up more curious, ask more questions, be patient, give the meeting time, and seek resolution and agreement instead of being right. That's the money spot. Understand what those common interests are and get to it. But you are the one that's going to the webinar. You are the one I'm asking to ask the questions, where are you coming from? I'd like to have you understand where I'm coming from, and then we're going to, however you want to do it, focus on what's the common interest in this. Because it'll be surprising to you how many times if you just slow down and be the bigger person in the conversation, be the owner of your own stuff in the conversation, because we show up as victims all the time, we just don't know it. Or we're at a team, or we lead a team that allow you to show up as a victim and you don't know it, but you insist on you getting your way, and therefore no one wants to speak up to you, with you. I guarantee you there's a few of you nodding your heads right now, I can't see you, because you know sometimes you show up as a victim and you demand other people to appease you, or you rule and manage them. And ladies and gentlemen, that's not leadership. That's not being kind at all. But some of you are in organizations that allow you to be that way, or you could be the person allowing others in your organization to be that way, and it's just not healthy. And whether you're in a good, strong organization with high net profit and great EBITDAs and all that, terrific. But this isn't about making money. This is about having better relationships. And when you learn how to communicate in a way that you show up courageous, because you're prepared, you show up courageous because you care about the other person, your relationships are going to go way up. And if you're in a place where you want to get noticed, this is absolutely going to help you. So where does this position you? In my opinion, if we're focused on courageous conversations and you put that in the center of your universe every so often, and I'll show you how to prepare here in a minute, you'll have higher engagement, you'll have better clarity, you'll show up as someone who has curiosity, and as we've already beat to a pulp, you'll be a much better listener. But having a courageous conversation will force you to be more engaged, it'll force you or allow you to be more curious. But aren't you seeking clarity? Aren't you seeking clarity in your relationships? Aren't you seeking clarity as to where this team is going? Are you seeking clarity as to what you'll be remembered for? And I say this to a lot of people I speak with. No one will ever care what your title was. I don't think CEO or CFO or COO or chief this or regional vice president that will ever show up on your tombstone. Walk around a cemetery, and if you find more than 4 titles, not lieutenant, sergeant, colonel, those are always there because of the men and women in service, and they deserve that. But no one cares what your title was. They will remember, though, how you showed up for other people. They will remember that. So here's a recap of our shifts. How are you going to behave? In my opinion, if you know me at all, I'm a big fan of servant leadership, not just leadership, but servant leadership. And that means to show up empathetic and humble and care about the other person first. Serve them, then lead them. Yes. Take care of them, ask them what they want and need from you. And here's how it goes. This is the behavior I'd like for you to consider. How may I serve you today? When's the last time you asked someone in your organization that question? Now, some of them might faint because they've never seen you or heard you say anything kind before, or they might say, hey, where's Bill or Diane coming from? But that's their question internally. And if they're not used to it, they'll get back to you and tell you exactly what you want. If you heard me speak before, I believe as parents, we could always ask this question as often as possible. How can I be a better parent today? It's the same question, but it's a parent versus a leader, because sometimes your 4-year-old and 6-year-old don't really know what a leader is. And mine didn't either, but they damn do now, because I ask them all the time. And it's amazing how much you can receive from someone when you ask them that question. How may I take care of you? What do you need from me? How can I be a better parent? Can you imagine? Well, here's what you will receive: the honest truth as to what they want and need from you. And if it's more cereal, staying up late, or watching a bad movie, yeah, that's going to come out. But you always have the opportunity to say, not today. I don't believe that's good for you. Or no, we're not watching our movies when you're 10 years old. Whatever it is. Be aware of the right language to use. Remember, we get to decide whether we're angry with our face or angry with our words or short, or are we kind and considerate and we show curiosity, interest for the other person. We get to decide. And when you're aware of that, your decisions will come out as such, as kind and considerate. Understand where your emotions are, where your heart is, where your head is, and why you're getting all excited about or fearful of this conversation. Part of it is, and I told my colleague this morning, it's because he or she means something to you. The relationship is important. That's why we get fearful. But we don't have to come from fear. We just have to recognize and understand why we're getting emotional about having this conversation. And if you believe you're going to get fired because you're prepared for, and you do have a courageous conversation with your leader, you're in the wrong place. And then listening, to understand, again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, not to be understood, but to understand where someone else is coming from. Here's a recap of our tools. Be happy to dig into any of these or all of these with you individually. I come into your organization and do this for you in person. Any or all of this presentation, I'd be happy to. Some of you on this webinar are actually clients. I've worked with you before. So we can do it in person or a webinar, but would love to serve you. And these tools are for real. They work. And consider this: untapped possibilities hide within uncomfortable conversations. Consider, if you show up more courageous, just a bit more, what possibilities are out there for you. Yes, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I know it doesn't sound interesting, but it is really cool when you know you're uncomfortable, but you're comfortable with it and you still show up. And the other person's going to walk away from that conversation going, wow, what's happened to April? How come Diane's on fire? Where's Bill coming from? How did Steve get here? And let them be curious as to how you decided to show up differently. Acknowledge, we've talked about that. And I love this one. Are you telling a story? Are you telling a story that you believe that needs to be told, but it's not even the truth? but you've said it over and over and over. So many people are just, they're tired of listening to it. And then the triggers happen. They will happen. We all get triggered. I don't care if you're 58, 28, or 48, you will be triggered. All I'm asking is you consider being more self-aware. So when they are, you can recognize it. And then my favorite, listening with your eyes too. That demonstrates, that you're being present. Some people ask, why do I do this? In my opinion, leadership is in everything we do. I've made the connection between parenting and leadership. I don't believe there's any difference. One takes different conversation and maybe more professionalism, etc. But you only have one heart. You only have one soul. Who are you? You can't be an asshole at work and then come home and pretend you're somebody else, and vice versa. You are you. So show up as the person you want to be. And my responsibility, especially with these two little guys, is to show up every day as best I can as a leader and a parent for them. So that what? So that I can do what parenting is all about. Help them prepare for tomorrow. Leadership. You're preparing your leaders for tomorrow. Why? Because you want to get better. You want to have a more productive team. You want to communicate better. Be a leader. And then that's my role. I left big corporate about 7.5 years ago to create my own leadership development firm and become an executive coach. And I have, without a doubt, have had more fun in the last 7.5 years than I have had the whole 20 years I was in big corporate, making tons of money, winning awards and blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm dedicated to, and I absolutely love it. And I enjoy giving people messages and asking questions. I love being curious. My dad, who passed away this past January, would always tell me, why do you ask why so much? Because I want to know. And I want you to know. When you're more curious, you'll have more information to serve the people in front of you better, like you've never served them before. Gotta love this one. The difference between what we do and what we're capable of doing, that big gap, would suffice to solve most of the world's problems. So don't be selfish with your capabilities. Don't be selfish and thin on what it is you truly want to share with someone else. But take some of this, pick a tool, play with it. Prepare for conversations with your heart. Prepare for conversations by asking questions. And if you want to dig deeper on how to prepare, or to maybe debrief a tough conversation that didn't go so well, I'm here. You all have my email. You all have my phone number. You know how to get to me through my website at adenleadership.com. Just go to the contact page. And Greta, if we have a few minutes, I'll take questions, or do you have comments you want to share?
Awesome. There is a question in the question box. Do you suggest rehearsal to practice your response and how it is outwardly observed?
Absolutely. And practice and rehearse with someone else and let them know. Give them the information. And by giving them the information of how you perceive this other person's going to show up, even that will help you say, how do I know that Jackson's going to be yelling at me when I use these words? But yes, practice with somebody. And if you can't find someone that's willing to give you the time, the man or woman in the mirror, good partner. Any other questions, Greta?
Oh, there's another one. How can I have a courageous conversation with someone if the other person is not willing to have it?
Well, I'd ask you, first of all, is that your assumption? Is that their behavior? They just shut you out every time you start to speak? I doubt that's totally true. So my strong recommendation is to just simply ask, Greta, are you willing to have a conversation about, this, and this, and this is the issue? I'd like to find out more about where you're coming from. And if you're available, I'd like for you to take a moment and find out where I'm truly coming from. Mm-hmm. So make sure that they're not willing instead of assuming they are not willing. But ask the question, are you willing? And if you get a no, what does that tell you about him or her and the relationship you're in?
Okay, another one just came in. How do you deal with constantly being dumbfounded in the middle of a conversation, but having all the information come flowing in after the fact?
Dumbfounded, you're dumbfounded or the other person's dumbfounded?
Doesn't say, oh, I am.
Okay. Well, a lot of that I believe you could eliminate being dumbfounded by preparing better, asking more questions, doing some research, understanding, because a lot of times people have been triggered in the past and they're carrying around this little burr in their saddle, and it's not your horse, it's theirs. So it might be time for you to ask different questions. And remember, dumbfounded, you can look up your own definition, but if I don't know something, I'm not smart, I can be the opposite. I'm not saying this person says they're dumb, but they're unclear as to how this can continue. That would be a real good time to set this conversation aside and talk about the relationship and why we're not more transparent with one another. I tell you what we'll do, Greta, is we'll also send out 2 slides that help people prepare for them, and then how to be in one and things to be aware of. I mean, literally a cheat sheet.
Okay. We have one comment in here. In a classic fear-based organization, leaders are expected to show up with answers more so than questions. Curiosity is sometimes viewed as a weakness or a time delay and therefore discouraged. Not so much of a question, just a comment. Didn't know if you had anything to respond back to that.
You had me and you lost me at fear-based organization. And if you're in a fear-based conversation and you're wanting to come from a place of courage and have wonderful open conversations and actually get real shit done, it's time for you to get out of a fear-based organization. If you're the one that's creating fear, please look in the mirror, call me and just ask me, why am I being fearful? Why do I put the fear of you know what in others? Because it's your ego. You're arrogant. You must be narcissist, or there's those kind of people running the organizations. And guys and gals, we allow it. As followers, we allow our leaders to be this way. And then we complain to our therapists, our husbands, our wives, our kids, anybody that's listening, possibly someone in a coffee shop that has no interest in having the conversation, but we insist on having it. Stop. That's it. It's not, well, if you know Brene Brown, then ask her the same question. Is vulnerability weak? Absolutely not. She puts vulnerability and courage right together as next door neighbors. There's many, many books on it. Simon Sinek the same way. Anything else?
A few people are asking for a couple of the slides to be shared with them in an email after the fact. Are we able to get those out to people?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I just ask them to send me an email directly. Let me know what portion of it. And then, I always send them to people interested. My ask is that they use them for themselves. And if they want to use them with their team, I'd like to give them a little coaching. So we're all saying the same things with the material. But yeah, happy to share the stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That is all the questions that have come in. Anybody has any last minute ones? Now is the time.
Thank you all. Again, I really appreciate you making time. We're going to do it again tomorrow. So if you know people that want to attend, it'll be done tomorrow. And obviously this one is recorded. So again, go out and be kind, listen with your heart, and just decide that courageous conversations can be a lot of fun if you allow them to be. So with that, I'll say goodbye.